Under normal circumstances, innate lymphoid cells type 3, ILC3S, are among the unsung heroes of gut immunity. These cells operate quietly at mucosal surfaces, especially in the intestines, forming a first response network that doesn't require prior exposure to pathogens to act. Think of ILC3S as the immune system's well-trained neighborhood watch, always alert, non-inflammatory by default, but quick to escalate defenses when the barrier is breached or when the microbial community gets out of line. One of their most critical roles is the production of interleukin-22, IL-22, a cytokine that promotes epithelial barrier integrity, mucus production, and antimicrobial peptide secretion. This supports a peaceful cohabitation between the host and its microbiome, no inflammation unless absolutely necessary. ILC3S act as peacekeepers, not warmongers. They monitor microbial patterns via epithelial and dendritic cell signals, helping maintain homeostasis without triggering damaging immune responses. In other words, ILC3S are professional diplomats with powerful weapons they rarely use, until something threatens gut harmony. Enter dietary fat. A sudden surge in high-fat intake, especially from saturated fats, disrupts this balance. It doesn't just overwhelm epithelial cells or shift microbiota composition, it hits the ILC3S directly. Research now shows that ILC3S, like other immune cells, are metabolically sensitive. When exposed to elevated dietary lipids, ILC3S begins storing fat within their cytoplasm, effectively becoming lipid-laden immune cells. This is not their usual state, and it's certainly not without consequences. Once they start accumulating lipids, ILC3S change their behavior. Rather than ramping up IL-22 production in response to increased threat, as would be expected when gut integrity is challenged by a high-fat diet, they actually become functionally impaired. Lipid accumulation dampens their ability to produce IL-22, compromising their core role in supporting epithelial resilience. This is the immunological equivalent of a firefighter too weighed down by gear to climb the ladder, or worse, one who forgets the water hose entirely. Beyond impaired cytokine production, ILC3S in a high-fat environment also shift their transcriptional profile toward a more inflammatory phenotype. Instead of orchestrating peaceful defense, they start contributing to the very inflammation they were designed to prevent. This maladaptive reprogramming can set off a vicious cycle. Reduced IL-22 leads to weakened barrier function, which allows more bacterial fragments to cross into tissue, which provokes further immune activation, and all the while, the ILC3S are stuck in this dysfunctional, lipid-swollen state. It gets worse. As these cells store lipids, they become metabolically less flexible. Their mitochondrial function becomes compromised, and their ability to respond to environmental changes, microbial signals, epithelial stress, or other cytokines, diminishes. It's not just that they're performing poorly, they're no longer listening effectively to the cues that would help them recover. The very cells designed to detect early signs of imbalance become part of the dysfunction. So, ironically, in response to dietary fat, a threat that should alert them to tighten barrier defenses, ILC3S are both biologically distracted and functionally reprogrammed. They're not just ineffective, they're counterproductive. They contribute to a pro-inflammatory environment while abandoning their post as epithelial guardians. This has long-term consequences. Over time, the cumulative effect of this ILC3 impairment includes persistent low-grade inflammation, microbiota dysbiosis, greater susceptibility to infections, and increased risk of chronic diseases like inflammatory bowel disease, metabolic syndrome, and even colorectal cancer. And all this can be set in motion not by years of poor diet, but by repeated exposure to high-fat meals, enough to tip the balance in vulnerable individuals or amplify existing immune stress. In short, ILC3S are finely tuned responders, guardians of gut integrity under ideal conditions. But when drowned in dietary fat, they don't just fail to defend. They become confused, sluggish, and inflammatory, a tragic twist for a cell type designed to maintain peace at the front lines of the gut.